What we will be doing now is exploring the logic of life, exploring the wisdom of life, but in a different way than I talked you through in the pre-recorded modules. We hope you have seen those. If you haven't, you can still get something out of today's session, but there will be a backdrop that may feel something is missing, because we will try to enter that kind of wisdom, which is not my wisdom, but is the wisdom of life, the logic of life, the guiding principles on this planet that we are lucky to inhabit. How can we tune in with that? How can we become that? How can we embody that? So that's the focus for our exploration today. And we will do that in a mixture of some prompts. I will now kind of guide you through using visuals and very few words, another angle to the logic of life. The 7 principles are all there in what I will briefly take you through, but it's in another way that I hope you can sense and feel. Our intention is that for you on our journey and for your continued journey, that this logic of life, this wisdom, just becomes part of your way of being in the world. It's not a checklist. It's not a to-do list. It's a way of being. It's a way of embracing life. And before we start to enter fields of ecosystem facilitation and how can we assess our organizational design in a way that is inspired by life, we want to make sure that this is embodied and this is understood on an inner dimension. Hope that makes sense. So we will have some meditations today that focus on embodying and seeing our bodies as ecology. You will have some breakout explorations. There will be 2 of those. We will also have a few silent reflection spaces for that, so you can anchor it into yourself in your own way. So I hope that sounds good to you. So the reason we are doing that, this is something that you have seen before, is because the inner informs the outer. And that's why we want to focus on the inner dimensions to this embracing, aligning with life. How are you in your body, in your behaviors, in your approach to life, aligning with life? How are you creating conditions conducive for life? Because that needs to be embodied before we venture out into the world and starts to create life-affirming conditions in every circle of influence. These are the 7 principles that I work with, that Giles Hutchins worked with, that is also in our shared book. Biomimicry 3.8, they have another set of principles, but they are more or less the same. John Fullerton has his 8 principles. So in the follow-up, we will be sharing both just as examples of other approaches, but the essence is the same. And you are free to use whichever framework resonates the most with you. You maybe want to draw up your own, but the essence is the same. It's all about what are the guiding principles to living systems? What are the organizing principles? How does life create conditions conducive to life? We have also shared this visual with you that many people benefit from having printed in a big format. It should be in your course forum in a high-res format, so you can have that printed if you want, put on the wall. I wanted, together with Anna Dinadin, create something beautiful that could be another reference point in our lives rather than a list of 7 principles. But always the invitation is to make this your own. Filter it through your lens so it becomes embodied and integrated for you, and not something that we rehearse, but something that is integrated into into our way of being. So as I said, I will fairly briefly, 7-10 minutes, just talk you through another angle to these 7 principles. And after that, we will have a little solo reflection with some music. So we are part of this beautiful cosmology if we zoom out. Our planet is one of many, but if we're zooming in on the wisdom of our beautiful planet Gaia, what is then the operating logic? What is the wisdom, the organizing principles that makes this abundant, life-affirming planet that we are lucky to inhabit? And how can we start to see the micro in the macro and the macro in the micro? And how can we start to celebrate life in a way where we are celebrating emergence, the constant continual emergence that we see on a daily basis, every second, when we start to train our eyes to see life and see emergence happening everywhere. When we start to surrender to death being part of life, and that life is this constant process of death, rebirth, decay, and coming back to life, of becoming new life, of becoming new flowers, new fruit, new compost, new seeds, and new needed decay. That life is, in a way, always a process of becoming. How can we train our perception to see that in our life, that when things fall apart, maybe things are actually becoming in a new life form and next step of its evolution? And how can we learn to surrender more to that rather than tightly hang on? How can we start to see that in life, and I'm not talking about the current human approach to life, but life on this planet, there is no waste. All waste is potent nutrition. And everything in life is serving a role elsewhere in the system. Everything has its purpose. So how can we start to train our minds as seeing ourselves as gardeners that are carefully tending to the soil within us, in our gut, in our brains, in our hearts, but also the soil around us, the foundation that we give ourselves to thrive, the foundation we give our relationships to thrive. Are we nourishing that foundation? Are we nourishing the relationships and the components that creates healthy soil? Healthy soil for your continuous unfolding and becoming. And how can we start to cultivate a relationship with thought processes around how can I become an expression of life? How can I, in my actions, become life, align with life? Because you are soil. I am soil. We are the seed, the soil, the flower, the decay, the compost, all at different times, but still all in one. How can you surrender to that, knowing that change is constant and it's part of the fabric of life? And how can you surrender to a dance with life? Surrender to change. Learn to listen deeply to change, but always respond to change in a way that is grounded through your root system, through your nourished roots, through your nourished mycelium. From that point, you are responding to change. You're responding to change from your essence. So going about life can become this celebratory dance with life, and know that this is your birthright. So how can we celebrate all rivers of change both the slow, the little creek, but also the forceful, powerful river that comes immediately after a rainstorm. How can we celebrate it all? Both the little creek and the powerful, forceful life force creation of a river after rain. And see the constant unfolding, metamorphosis. As we've celebrated in the Hobie quote, you can learn to let go of the shore and celebrate. So sense into this awe-inspiring knowing that your body is constantly in tune, constantly sensing and responding. Your breath is always inviting in new energy, new life, new possibilities. And your exhale is constantly letting go. Celebrating the wholeness of your very being. Celebrating the relationships, the interconnected relationships. And understand that everything and everyone serves their unique purpose to the greater whole. And they all contribute, both all of your different organs within your body, but also all the relationships that surround you, all in each their own way, contribute to this dynamic equilibrium, homeostasis in your living systems, both the inner and the outer. How can we start to train a lens where we actually see those relationships and nourish them as a gardener, or letting them go if they are not part of that constant flow of energy and matter? Becoming a gardener requires a perception where we know what to let go of and what to let come. And know that the quality of your relationships will determine the health, the responsiveness, the carrying capacity of your inner and outer ecosystem. The quality of your relationships in your family, in your team, your organization will always determine the carrying capacity of that living system's capacity to withstand all kinds of shocks and disturbances that will inevitably come its way. Strengthen that through relationships. And see and celebrate this interconnectedness of life and the multidimensional layers of networks and interwoven threads and pulsating potential and layers and fractals of patterns of beauty. And where can you start to train that lens to look carefully, look closely, and spot the golden threads of potential that are always hiding in every tension, every edge effect? We are made up of these pulsating connections and relationships coming together in pure life force creation. How can we surrender to that? I am because of the connections and relationships within my body, constantly communicating, sharing, sensing, and responding. And I embrace and celebrate the diversity of life and truly celebrate, truly understand the importance of diversity in the micro, in the macro, within me and my friends, my colleagues, my community, my emotions. Celebrate it all. Know that life thrives thanks to high degrees of biodiversity, of diversity. And celebrate the diversity and the unity and how we are all contributing to the caring capacity of the whole, each in our very unique way. And train again the lens that sometimes the greatest potential can be unfolded when we are inviting in things that may scare us, that we may be fearful of. That sometimes what we fear is the very thing, the very tension, the very infection that bio talked us through, the very keystone species that my ecosystem needed to come back to wholeness, health, and dynamic equilibrium. And how can we breathe again and always invite in that inhale and that exhale? And how can we consciously train our capacity to hold space for polarities, hold space for it all, the polarities, dualities, dichotomies, and see yourself as a weaver, an alchemist that is weaving a new tapestry of life, an alchemist of life force potential, and consciously holding space for it all, be here for it all, value the both and let go of the either it's this or it's that. We don't need to put things into boxes. We can celebrate the perfect alchemy of it all. How can we stop and sense inward again with the lens of the gardener, the ecosystem nourisher? So right now, in this given moment, which nutrients and flows of energy and matter do I need? Does my ecosystem need to fully thrive here and now? What needs to go? What needs to come? And how can you understand and have this deep knowing that the energetic cell divisions that you constantly foster through your actions becomes a mirror of you? And how can you train your lens to see and sense into the quality of the energetic cell divisions that comes from you? Beautiful, beautiful ripples stream through you and beyond you, towards you, from you. And we are here to celebrate it all. We're here to surrender to it all, to all the cycles. And we trust that the cyclical patterns of life and death, and we celebrate the metamorphosis, however painful it can be. We trust that there's wisdom for us in the silent, naked, wintering phases. And maybe there's a radical truth and authenticity that lies for us here when we surrender to it. And how can we prepare everything so that when the energetic boost of spring is here again, both on a day-to-day basis, seasonal, monthly, daily, cyclical, how can we then be ready for all that life force potential? And how can our root system be ready for it so it can healthily store all the different nutrients and water and resources for us to navigate yet another wintering phase with healthy roots, with healthy soil, healthy relationships, so that we are ready again to let go of it all and shed our leaves? And how can we celebrate the life that we see in the decay, knowing that it's just another process of life and that it is this becoming phase? Celebrating the micro in the macro and surrender to the cosmology within me and beyond. And can we truly see ourselves as beautiful cosmology? And can we truly surrender to this logic of life, this greater wisdom that surrounds us in living systems on this planet that we call home? And how can we start to train our capacity to design and align with life and not go against life in our way of being? So let's breathe again and tune into life in our own way from our corner of the world. We will just tune in to what feels alive for us when we tune into the question of how can we align more with life? What is our current relationship with life? What comes up for you when we are exploring that? You can meditate, you can journal, you can doodle, you can draw, do whatever feels good to you. How can we surrender to life align with life, become life, cultivate a relationship to life. What is your current relationship to life?